This is the week 2 lecture for chapter 2, terms pertaining to the body as a whole. If you turn in your textbooks and follow along with me right away, at the very beginning of this chapter, we talk about the cells. You can see there's a picture there for labeling the major parts of the cell if you want to go into that. On page 35, we get into chromosomes. There's a picture there of a karyotype. It says it's a karyotype of a normal male. There's a karyotype on the next page that shows you the difference and shows you of a Down syndrome female. So you can kind of compare those two. They're really interesting if you want to take a look at those a little closer. The study section in pink there is a place where I would, if I was teaching this face-to-face, go around the room, be able to say these words out loud and know their descriptions or their meanings. Anabolism, catabolism, cell membrane, chromosomes, cytoplasm, DNA, endoplasmic reticulum, genes, karyotype, metabolism, mitochondria, and nucleus. These are all terms you should be able to say. And I know this is the beginning of class, and I know that right away, I remember being in midterm class, my mouth was doing crazy things. Your tongue gets tied up with your lips, and you can't figure out sometimes how to say some of these medical terms. So it is really important that you feel and are observed as being educated, right, when we speak the language. And that's what this is about too. These audio and verbal lectures so that you can hear me speak the language, and that allows you, and is helpful for you to speak the language as well. If we keep turning the page, this is a lot of anatomy and physiology type information that we do go over, but not as heavily. It's not something that's ever really quizzed or tested over in the class, just because we are here for the language. That's what this class is about. So we get into the differences and the different types of cells here. There's some nice pictures for us of the different types of tissues as well that you can look at. The different systems and organ systems or body systems are listed for us as we move on. There's another study section 2, which composes of adipose tissue, cartilage, epithelial cells, histologist, larynx, pharynx, pituitary gland, thyroid gland, trachea, ureter, urethra, uterus, and viscera. Be really careful with ureter and uterus, okay, that you know the difference between those two because they're super close. Then we get into body cavities, okay. So ventral or anterior versus dorsal or posterior. You can label those in the exam or in that picture as well. We have cranial, the thoracic, then spinal, the abdominal, and then the pelvic listed there, those body cavities for us. As we keep going through, there's another study section that we can go through. The abdominal cavity, the cranial cavity, the diaphragm, dorsal or posterior, mediastinum, pelvic cavity, peritoneum, pleura, pleural cavity, spinal cavity, thoracic cavity, and ventral or anterior. Again, say those words. Pause me whenever you like and say those words or say them with me. Okay, that can really help. We get into quadrants and splitting the body up here into the regions and the quadrants. It's really important for you to label those. I would label both of those pictures there on those pages. And then the divisions of the back. Know that it goes from cervical to thoracic to lumbar to sacral to then the coccygeal, and then how many, okay, there are in each one of those areas. Positional and directional terms is something that's really important. We know that anterior or the ventral side is the front side of our body. The posterior or dorsal side is the back side. And I think a lot of students help remember that with the dorsal fin, like the dorsal fin on a dolphin. It's up across their back, right? So the back is the dorsal side or the back side of the body. That's a good way to kind of remember that. And then what's the difference between deep and superficial? What's the difference between proximal and distal, inferior, superior, so on and so forth down that listing. That's really good for you to pay attention to. We get to our blue boxes here, which is everything, okay? The blue boxes is where you need to focus your time throughout the whole rest of the semester, okay? I would say the blue boxes and beyond, okay, is going to be the most that you need to pay attention to. We have combining forms here. Some of this might be a little bit of repetition. Maybe you don't remember it yet, that's good. But go through those terms. And write down, I'm looking at cervical, the combining form cervical up on the next page. It says the meaning is neck, okay, of the body or neck of the uterus, depending on what we're talking about. And if you say, well, how am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know if we're talking about the neck of the body, like the neck, or the neck on a female's uterus? Well, what's the context of what you're reading? Are you doing a female physical exam where they're talking about, something that's cervical, okay, in the female genitalia? You're talking about the uterus, okay? If you're doing a musculoskeletal type examination and the physician says something about the cervical area, they're probably talking about the neck, okay, and those vertebrae in that area. So it's just all in context, okay? You can figure it out. You don't have to worry about knowing those kind of things. It comes to you. If you wrote in, you can see the lines in your books in these blue boxes, using the cervical right there at the top of the page, cervical, okay? AL means pertaining to. So remember when we're doing descriptions and definitions, we start at the back of the word, we start at the end. And we say pertaining to, because that's what AL means, right? Pertaining to the neck or body of the uterus, okay? So that's how you can make that definition. Craniotomy, for instance, okay? Write in, use this area. You paid for this book, use this book. It's the incision into the skull, okay? Otomy, right? Into the skull. So going through your blue boxes is something you need to really, really make sure that you pay attention to. And then we get into your exercises, and none of these will ever be assigned to you, because you have all the answers to the exercises. They are great for you to work through when you're getting prepared for taking a test, okay, as well. And there are a lot of exercises online. So when you buy the book, in the front of the very front cover of this book, it says, you've purchased more than just a textbook. There are interactive, gradable games and exercises out there for you, different animations and things that you can do. So you can go in and register this book and use those online resources. It would be great for you to be able to do that. That's basically all we needed to go through for Chapter 2. Chapter 3 is also assigned to you this week, and Chapter 3 just says suffixes, okay? So when we start this chapter, bang, right away we have blue boxes. We're kind of hit with a lot of information. They look a little different than what we've seen so far because they're all filled in, okay? We've seen a lot of blanks before and things like that. This is kind of a double whammy. If you see, there's combining form and the definition of it, and then more combining forms and more definitions, okay, all on the same page. And I think this is the only time you actually see it this way. You usually have terms then that use that combining form so that you can, write definitions and understand. So a lot of these, you need to make sure you're making your flashcards. They might be repetitious, take a look and be sure. Then we get to suffixes and terminologies. If you turn the page where it looks a little more normal, where we have words or a terminology term, and then, the meaning or the blank that we can fill in. So there's a lot of suffixes here you need to pay attention to. Look at the formation of plurals at the bottom of that page. Anytime you see a watch box, it's super important. Make sure you take the time to stop what you're doing, go down and read through that so that you can make sure you understand. So there's a lot of blue boxes here. Our blue boxes are going on for pages and pages and pages if we flip through this, right? It's a lot to hit you with, and I don't want you to be discouraged, and I don't want you to think you can't, get through this class. A lot of these same suffixes are going to be ones that we see throughout the rest of this whole thick book. So the sooner you learn them, the better, right? Okay. So just study those cards, make those cards and study them as much as you can. You'd be really surprised at how much time you have to study cards if you have them with you, okay, all the time in your purse or your vehicle or wherever. So do take time to get through these blue boxes, work with them, just pencil things in here. That's the best way to learn, is to dig in and get through. Then we get to a closer look. They talk a little bit about hernias and the different types of hernias. You can read about those. That's really important. We talk about streptococcus. They go through some blood cell information, acromegaly, laparoscopies and what they, entail. Tracheotomies. We talk about the adenoids a little bit. It's kind of random, okay? Adenoids are a gland. Okay, well then tracheotomy is a procedure. Well, okay, we're kind of flying around. This chapter is kind of goofy and they're not the best. We kind of have a little bit of conglomerated information until we really, really get through chapter 4 and to chapter 5. Chapter 5 is going to be your very first body system. We learn just about the digestive system all on its own, and that's the way we use our focus the rest of the semester. So getting through this week is going to be good. It's a lot of flashcard making, a lot of studying, and getting ready for those tests, taking those Dropbox assignments, assessments, and doing your best, okay?